How's the weather down south, Rick?
A little smoky right now.
Oh, yeah, right, right. How far did the fire come to you?
They evacuated about up to about 10 miles from us,
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
but now the wind's picking up again, so we'll see how that shows.
Okay. So another 20 seconds and then we'll get started. All right, I think we should start now. Can you see my screen, Rick?
Yes.
Okay. Welcome, everyone, to this webinar, the last webinar from UC Easy for the 2017 calendar year. My name is Vinny Gupta, and I am co-founder of a college admissions company called UC Easy, UCEAZY. Along with me, we have one of our college admissions and financial aid experts, Mr. Rick Napora, who I'll introduce in a second. But Rick, please say hello.
Hello.
So the format today would be, we'll go until about 12 noon Pacific time. What we're going to do is that I'll give everyone a very brief introduction about who our company is. Then we will dive right into the topic for today, which is how does one fund their child's college education, or how do students fund the college education. So there will be a structured presentation of about 20-25 minutes, and then we'll have questions after that, which Rick and I will be taking. So let me start with a quick introduction about who we are, in case some of you are wondering who this company is. Now, several of you are school counselors. Welcome to our program. There are several of you are current UC Easy clients. Welcome. And then there are other folks that are not familiar with UC Easy. UC Easy is a company based in Silicon Valley, California. And our mission is to make college admissions easy for students from first and second generation immigrant families. I am one of them. I moved to US about 25 years back from India. So did my co-founder. Our personal story is that we found this entire college admissions process very overwhelming for our children, highly anxiety prone. And we decided to start a company whose mission is to help students from other first and second generation immigrant families with college admissions and financial aid. How to make college affordable is a part of that mission. What we offer as a solution, we have several solutions that I will touch upon towards the end of the program, or you can go to our website, uceazy.com. What we primarily offer is college admissions preparation or college admissions guidance from highly qualified college admission experts like Rick Napora. He'll be speaking with you later today. And they can help you with all aspects of the college admissions process, starting from the 8th grade, all the way for transfers from community colleges to four-year colleges, or even transfers from a four-year college to another four-year college. Last point I wanted to make here is that while we are a business, we have a social mission. We want to help every child from first and second generation immigrant families that may or may not be able to afford our programs. So as a part of that, we have an initiative called UC Easy Philanthropy, or UC Easy Giving Back, through which our goal is to provide completely free college admissions guidance through people like Rick Napora to 50 students every year. These students need to be from first generation immigrant families and low income. So we are looking for such students. So if you have someone that you know who might benefit, please contact us. We'll appreciate you for that. So with that, let's jump into the program for today. Couple of housekeeping things. You can see us, you can hear us. we cannot see you, we cannot hear you, because we have lots of people in this call and everyone's videos will not fit on our screen. Questions for us. If there are housekeeping type questions, for example, I accidentally mute myself, you can't hear me, please type in your chat window that Rick and I can see. But for questions, please type those in the Q&A box in your toolbar. While I'm speaking, Rick will try to address those by typing. And once we go into Q&A, he will be reading out questions from your Q&A. You don't have to wait for your questions until I'm done. So I'm just going to switch to a different deck. Give me a second. All right. Here comes financial aid, guys. All right. Okay. Exciting, exciting, exciting. Okay. So what we're going to do is let's start first with the bad news. And then I promise you it'll be good news from this point on. So first of all, let's start with what are the costs associated with typical types of colleges in the United States. So what we have done is that we have created 4 categories. Community colleges, which as you might know are 2-year colleges. California, for those of you who are in California or are planning to apply to California colleges, there is the California State University system, which has 23 campuses, and the University of California. And then there are thousands of private colleges in the country, ranking from Harvard to names that you may not heard of. So let's look at the cost associated here. For community colleges, the cost if your child is going to be staying in the campus, in the college, then including room and board, which is for first-generation immigrant families here, room and board would essentially mean the dormitory or the hostel, as it's called in other countries, and food on campus. So that's room and board. Transportation is cost of commuting from home to the college. And then personal expenses are other things like clothing, social expenses. These are rough ranges used. As you can see, this is the same for all colleges. So community college, if you are living at home, you meaning the student, it's going to be only about $3,300. But if you factor in other costs, it could go higher. California State University, as you can see here, the other costs are similar to community college, but the tuition fee is much higher. And then the living expenses for on-campus housing is much higher. So see the total between $20,000 and $30,000 per year, by the way. All of these are per year, times 2 in case of community college, times 4 for CSU, UC, or private colleges. UC is a lot more expensive, at least on this slide, on tuition fee, which is twice than CSU's, and room and board is roughly same as CSU's. Private colleges, see the huge jump in tuition fee, huge jump. And then room and board, roughly similar to UC's, all other expenses same. So now let's start looking at the total sticker price, sticker meaning that's the cost that's advertised by the college. So community colleges could actually be as little as $3,300, but all the way to $18,500. CSUs, again, if you are living at home, then the room and board will be a very different number. But if you're living on campus, then higher. UC is a little bit higher. Private colleges, much, much higher. So this provides you a range. So if I start putting a range now, $3,300 at the lowest end for community college for a student living at home, all the way to private college if you're living on campus, up to $70,000. Again, these numbers are per year. Some of these expenses, transportation, personal expenses, needless to say, would be much higher for international students.
Vinny,
all
the audience can't see your slide deck.
they can't see my slide deck. Okay.
Mm-mm. Right now, I can only see the pane view, and I could only see like the About You, See Easy, but we couldn't see the actual numbers you were talking about.
Okay. How about now?
There we go. Yeah.
Okay. My apologies, and thank you for whosoever alerted us to that. Rick, is it now okay?
It is.
Okay. So, guys, sorry about that. So let me give you 10 seconds to look at the slide deck again. And so essentially, community college, CSU, UC, private colleges, and the total sticker price, the total of all of these are right here. Rick, do you think I should cover this slide one more time, or?
No, I think that's sufficient because you'll have it recorded and the audience will be able to go back and review the numbers.
All right. Okay. So this is the start point in terms of what the maximum cost for you could be. So enough of getting scared. Now, going forward, now let's talk about what are the different ways in which what you end up paying can be reduced. So this is just a slide that we put together that that a child in the month of April gets this envelope, and now she's wondering, oh my gosh, how do I pay for this? Okay, so now let's talk about what are the different sources of financial aid. And I'm actually going to ask Rick to jump in here. So the way to reduce these college costs, there is two ways to do that, or multiple ways actually. So the first is money that comes from someone else that you do not have to give back, and that is grants and scholarship. And that could be of two kinds, and actually Rick will add a little nuance to it. So there is need-based, which is based upon your family income, and there's merit-based. Rick, do you want to add a little comment here before we talk about self-help?
Sure. And then the additional one that we didn't mention is talent-based. And that would be if you're an extraordinary athlete and then you're going to play a sport for the school that you've been accepted to, or you're an extraordinary musician and you apply to a musical school. So that's one of the other ones that's much more rare than the need or merit-based.
Right. Thank you for that, Rick. So need-based, so these are grants and scholarship, money that you do not need to give back. And that's the key thing, free dollars. And this can come from different sources. This can either come from the federal government. This can either come from the college. And then there are zillions of small scholarships that are available through a bunch of sources that Rick will talk about. So those are grants and scholarship. Then there is self-help. Self-help is that you can actually borrow money. Then borrow money can come from federal programs, federal loans, or you can go to the private market, just like you take loans for homes or cars. And then work study. Work study program is when the student works on campus or elsewhere. And by doing so, all that money can go towards college education. Rick, do you want to add anything to this slide?
Yeah, and the work study typically depends also on your need base, because if your parents make enough money and a student says, well, I just want to go on college and I want to work on campus, they typically reserve the work study slots for the students that they've deemed financially needy, and then they would provide that as a break in tuition. And then for loans, the bad kind of loan is the kind that starts to incur interest from the day that you borrow it. And the good kind of loan, if there is a good kind of loan, would be what's called a subsidized loan, in which the government actually subsidizes, and you don't have to start paying interest until typically 6 months after the student graduates from college.
Thanks very much, Rick. So moving on. So look at this at a high level. Just think of a top line. What is the sticker price that these colleges are talking about, minus the grants and scholarships, minus the loans and self-study? That is the ultimately what your actual out-of-pocket would be. So your goal in this exercise is to maximize if I go back to the previous slide, your goal is to maximize grants and scholarships, because that's money that does not have to be given back. And through some combination of self-help, we'll talk a little bit more about that. Your goal overall is to reduce what you ultimately have to pay out of pocket or cash every year. Now let's talk about net price calculator, because we talked about sticker price, but in reality, what do most families at your income level, that's the key term, at your family's income level, what do most families end up paying? So first thing, net price calculator. This is a mandatory requirement by law that every college has to post on their site what is the net price that you would pay, the sticker price and an estimate of financial aid that is available. So let's take an example. San Francisco State, which is a part of a California state university system, the sticker price, based upon the numbers that I had done on my first slide, the sticker price is $11,214. Now, this is based upon someone that is living off campus, so or living at home. Now, on their site, they will talk about that for a family of 4 earning $65,000 a year, student living at home, the estimated total grant aid is roughly this. And this is all different kinds of aid, merit and need-based, etc. So ultimately, for a family of 4 earning $65,000, the estimated net price, what you will pay, is actually $5,700 versus $11,200. Now, your income obviously may be different, our guests today. So there are different sites that I will talk about and Rick can talk about where you can actually see for different colleges in the country, for different income level ranges, what is the net price. The goals of these slides is just to show to you that sticker price in itself is a meaningless number. That's what we're trying to talk about. UC Santa Cruz, for California-based people and for the guidance counselors from California schools that we have today, your typical cost of attendance, your sticker price, including student living on campus, roughly $37,000. But for a family of 4 earning $65,000, look at the grants here. Actually, for this family, we will talk about a UC program called Blue and Gold, where your tuition fee is completely zero if your income level, family income, is less than $80,000 a year. So this entire $17,000 becomes zero if your family income is below 80. 2/3 of students that go to University of California pay zero tuition fee. So next time you feel angry about University of California in some ways, or the fact that they're taking more and more international students or out of state, keep in mind that very few of their in-state students pay any tuition at all. Okay. To the affluent families listening to us today, keep in mind that the California median income, family income, is $64,500. That's the context of all this, guys. So which is why the 65,000 number is important. Let's move on to University of Chicago, my favorite. Why? Because my son is a junior there. Look at this number, guys, $70,000. This is real. How? Because I know. But look at all this for a family of 4 earning $65,000. Do you see that their grants, $56,000, estimated net is $7,000, 10% of the total. So remember when Rick and I started this conversation, or perhaps we didn't talk about it, the big picture for everyone on this call today, plenty of money lying around for college education. You just need to be smart about it. The second big message we want to give to you is to the parents, students, counselors on this call, please do not kill a college dream just because you think you cannot afford it. I think that is a sin. Given, and look at all the numbers that I'm talking about, right? So if there's only one message that you can take away from our webinar today is, please do not disqualify any college because whether you think you can afford it, especially not in the early grades. keep moving. Let's keep moving here. Average net price, there is this site, and Rick, there's another site, right, which gives a summary view of average net price of different college broken down by household income.
Yes, collegedata.com is one of them. There are several. That one's pretty easy to use, and you could do a estimated family contribution for any college that you want in North America, pretty much.
So estimated family contribution, guys, is what, when you apply for financial aid, is what do they expect the family to pay? So sticker price minus grants and scholarships minus loans, what is left is your contribution. So imagine, so look at this, like for Pomona College, which is in Southern California, in Claremont, they are like University of Chicago, 70,000 a year total. And for a family, look at this, for different household incomes, even for 110,000 plus, in that kind of a range, say 110 to 120, you are actually not paying 49,000 or 70, you're paying much less than that. In general, the rule of thumb is that if your family income is under $150,000, you will get some help. Okay. We'll briefly talk about, for California students, the UC and Cal State programs. I already talked about the UC Blue and Gold Opportunity Plan, which is a UC plan. Any family earning less than 80,000, there is zero tuition. California state universities have different similar programs, but you do need to apply for these programs. There's also another scholarship program run by state of California for families that are considered middle class, $80,000 to $150,000. There is a declining level of aid available as your income goes from $80,000 to $150,000. And then there is several other programs, including an equal opportunity program for UC, CSU, and community colleges. Rick, do you want to make any points here on this slide?
No, I think you pretty much covered it. And some of that can depend, but then when we start talking about FAFSA and CSS profile, then we can come back to this point.
Okay, great. One other point that we wanted to make is, since a lot of our guests today on our program are from California and Western states, is that there is a program called Western Undergraduate Exchange Program, where California students can attend public colleges in 15 or 16 other states at a significantly lower tuition as compared to out-of-state applicants, say, for example, applying to University of Nevada. Look at this, $20,000 tuition, but for a California applicant is $9,300. So yesterday I was speaking with a parent in Fremont, California. They're considering moving to Arizona. So this kind of a thing would apply to them. So huge resource here. If you go to this site, you would see that there are, I think, 15 or 16 Western states and territories like Guam included in that. I believe Hawaii as well, which is always fun. Okay, now let's talk about the process. The most critical thing that you need to know of while applying for financial aid is the free application for federal student aid. This is the federal application. In general, you don't need to worry about this application unless you are a senior, a high school senior. The application opens on October 1st. And we'll talk in one of the following slides that ideally for the seniors on this call, please fill this form as soon as you can, but in general, no later than December 31st, even though this form is open till June 30th. And UC and CSU, if you're looking for aid from them, you must fill FAFSA latest by March 2nd. So there is a process here where the parent and the student will need to create a PIN, and then you have to apply. But this is a fundamental application. Most of the information here is type of information that you will fill in your tax forms or your mortgage application. Your income level, assets, have you contributed to 529 plans, the child's income, all of those things. The second one is a CSS profile, which is a separate application required by many private colleges in addition to the FAFSA. Now, a little bit more complexity here, like University of Chicago, where my son is, we could do a CSS profile, or we could apply their own, or we could fill their own University of Chicago financial checklist, which we did. So a little bit complications there. Now, what you need for the seniors on this call and their parents, remember please that these deadlines are they are not straight. So for some private colleges, the financial aid application deadlines are earlier than the actual application forms. USC, I think, is November 1 for this. Rick?
So some of them have already passed, yes. So it's important to make sure. And they can still apply and still be admitted, but it could affect financial aid consideration.
Right. USC, I've heard, is one of the notorious ones because it's in early November and it's just so out of the pattern, right? So be careful. But that is where, if you choose to work with a UC Easy expert like Rick Napora, that's the kind of help that we provide you for financial aid. Another thing to keep in mind, remember I talked about good news, that for those of the students from really low income families where you qualify for the free reduced lunch program, then there's a bunch of free stuff that you get. For example, ACT and SAT registration, there are fee waivers on that. Every time they send the ACT or the SAT results to colleges, up to 4 colleges is free. UCs allow up to 4 applications, up to 4 campuses out of 9. They don't charge you the fee, which is typically $70. Similarly, for California State University, up to 4 free. So a bunch of free things available if you are in that income range. For any questions, you can talk to a UC Easy counselor, or this is something that your school counselor would be happy to help you with. Mm-hmm. Now let's talk about strategies and techniques. And Rick, I'll need your support on this one because you are the pro.
Okay.
So the first one, the biggest mistakes to avoid, regardless of your income level, guys, please fill the FAFSA. Why? Even if you do not qualify for the need-based aid, remember we talked about that, need-based aid, which is based upon income level, but there's merit-based aid. The merit-based FAFSA is a fundamental document. And please feel that there is research saying that students who file during the first 3 months, which is from October 1st till December 31st, receive double the grants. It's simply because the limited pools of money available, the early bird gets the worm. Anything you want to add here, Rick?
Yeah, you do run out of money quickly on the grant. So, and then it's new. The deadline used to not open until later. So October 1st took some people by surprise. So our advice is always like the second that window opens, it would only take you probably 30 minutes to fill out a FAFSA with all the documentation if you have it in hand. And you can always amend your FAFSA. So even if you pull the trigger and get it all sent and then you made a mistake, you can go back and alter it. But it's really important to get it in as soon as possible.
Okay, so moving on. So we covered, so first one is please file FAFSA. Number 2, don't delay it. Okay, let's move on with some more pointers. Number 3 is failing to apply for scholarships. Scholarships, the definition of scholarship is free money given to a scholar. So every dollar that you get reduces $1 from your expected family contribution. Now, there are different sites that are listed here, and this is not all of it, where you can search for scholarships. But Rick, here, I think you have lots of experience here in terms of success rate for getting these scholarships and how much time is taken. Can you take a couple of minutes and share your experience with the families?
Sure. The general rule of thumb is if you have a student, especially a highly stressed student that's got a lot of other things going on, you don't want to spend a whole bunch of time applying to a scholarship that there are millions of other applicants with a low yield potential. So, you know, if Johnny is at home and he's staying up until 2 in the morning to write an essay for which he might get $150, then that might not be worth it. So it's really important to kind of research the scholarships that match the criteria that you're looking for, that have a potential for a high yield, and that won't detract from your overall profile of your potential standardized test scores, GPA, and then overall mental health.
Thank you, Rick. So moving on, number 4 mistake to avoid: borrowing too much. So check this number, guys. The US aggregate student loan today is 1.4 trillion. 1.4 trillion. This is a national problem. And an average student comes out with $38,000 in student debt when they graduate from a 4-year college. First generation immigrants that we work with, in general, we have seen that families, especially coming from countries in Asia, they generally don't take as much loans. I think it's a cultural thing. And I'm not saying that with any judgment at all. I'm just sharing a fact. So perhaps this may not be that much of a concern to first generation immigrant parents on this call today, but this is an issue. So while we say our recommendation is that definitely consider loan as a part of your program if you feel comfortable, if your values allow, that's your decision. But in general, what we say is that the total debt, federal debt, private debt, meaning loans that you and the student takes, generally should stay within what the first year salary of the student would be after graduation. And you can actually see calculators here. Now, the second part of this is always consider federal loans first. They are somewhat subsidized by the taxpayer. How things will change with the recent the tax package that Congress is working on, I don't know. It's all up in the air, but at least until then, the federal loans are actually cheaper and they have more lenient repayment plans. Private loans, just like when you take mortgage loans for your home or car loans, please do the same level of diligence in terms of checking out, do they have variable interest rates or will the rates balloon after some time? So just do the due diligence around those things. Rick, any on the financial mistakes to avoid, is there something you wanted to add before I go to the next point?
Sure. And this is why it's really important. I mean, a lot of people tell their kids, you have your whole life to decide, what you want to be when you grow up. But it's really important that kids start thinking about it sooner and sooner, because potentially if you know exactly what you want to study in the school that has that particular program, you could be out in 4 years. But now the typical time to graduate from college is much longer than 4 years. So that would rack up another additional, year of loans or 2 years of loans. And so it's not uncommon for kids to want to change their major 2 or 3 times. And as a parent, you could end up paying for 6 or 7 years of college instead of 4. So also why it's important to start thinking of things, and getting in front of it.
Okay, so now moving on to one other strategy. Now this one applies to seniors that are applying now, or actually UCs and CSEs that are already done, but private colleges, the applications are you're still in the process. Regardless of your financial situation, definitely make sure that while you hope for the best on financial aid and all the things that we talked about, please do make sure, this is a very strong recommendation, that there should at least be a financial aid safety school that you apply to in your college list, something that you know that you can afford, even if everything is zero. So we're talking about a worst case scenario planning, because you never want to be in a situation where you get a bunch of college acceptances, but somehow you don't get anything. So definitely have that one safety college available there. And someone like a UC Easy counselor like Rick can help you with that. Or if you cannot afford someone like Rick, talk to your school counselor. But this is something to keep in mind. You never want to be in a position where you apply to, your entire list is outside, your entire list is dependent on some form of financial aid. Rick, any pointers there?
You can actually, a lot of people steer away from colleges that aren't considered as prestigious in like U.S. News and World Report rankings, and that frenzy in and of itself is what often makes a college more competitive, hence their ability to, not give as much financial aid break. So if you did end up applying to a college that was a good fit, where you are an applicant that ranks higher than the competitors, you could potentially get more financial aid from those schools.
Great. Thanks very much, Rick. So moving on, just last couple of slides before we open to questions. So in case any of you on this call are undocumented students, or if you're a counselor that knows an undocumented student, California does offer financial aid, or several California public colleges do offer financial aid for undocumented students. And these are some of the websites that you can look at. Again, your school counselor or a UCEV counselor can help you with. Keep in mind that these conversations are all kept confidential, so please do not hesitate to ask for help. Final words on financial aid before we open up for questions. There is an excellent site that is on the screen, finaid.org, that offers a lot of good advice on financial aid. Number two, if you are a family of a senior, among all the conversations that you're doing with the college applications process, and I understand, and Rick does, this is highly stressful, but as we discussed earlier, please do the FAFSA stuff as soon as you can. And remember, in a lot of cases, the parents can do the FAFSA without distracting the student from the college applications or essays. The other thing is that a lot of the deadlines on scholarships are, these are different deadlines. So some of those deadlines may be happening now. So the best way to do this in an ideal scenario would be let the student, I'm talking about just this month, guys, because by January 1, most of your applications would be done. Again, for seniors, that the best distribution of workload would be let the student work on the college application and essays, and the parents can work on the FAFSA and other pieces. Another word of advice, and this is, we talked about this early on, don't disqualify colleges or what non-good colleges, whatever they are, on the basis of your ability to pay. So we just repeating the message, a lot of money available depending upon your income status. And another thing to keep in mind is that even for affluent families where you do not qualify for need-based aid, if your student is a gifted one and there are multiple colleges that want your child, you can actually negotiate with these colleges even though you do not need or you don't have the financial need. And that is something that someone like Rick Napora can help you with. And always ask that, especially if you think you deserve it, as to say in America, right, if you don't ask, you don't get. It never hurts. And for my personal example, and that's the beauty of this country. So University of Chicago, where my son was, at that time when he went in there, I actually needed that financial aid. And initially they declined. I went back, and if any of you want details, contact me offline. I'll talk to you about my story as to how I convinced them to reduce the sticker price by 50% just by asking and by having a professional, polite conversation. But that's a huge learning, guys. It saved me $35,000 a year times 4. So big money. That's not just McDonald's burgers. Okay, so with that, I'm going to stop sharing. We'll spend the next, say, 5 minutes or so for any questions that you have, and then take it from there. So Rick, do we have questions in the Q&A panel?
No, we had 3, but they were all initially about being able to have access to see the slides.
Okay. Okay, so let me welcome the audience if you have any questions, please type in the Q&A window. Rick, so let me actually quickly introduce Rick a little bit more. Rick is a high school counselor in Southern California, and he's been a school counselor and a college admissions expert for 18 years. He's actually even taught at San Diego State University. He's done a lot of things in life besides being an avid dog lover, and you have 4 of those?
Yes, and I was poor growing up, so.
Rick is one of our financial aid experts, and besides being one of our best counselors on college admissions, especially tricky situations, so this is your opportunity to ask him questions. Rick, while the audience is typing away, or so I hope, what kind of questions do, let's just say a family making 100K to 150K a year, what kind of questions do they ask you, or what kind of misinformation do you think they have that you would like to address?
Sure. So the reality is that most parents in California that are even making $200,000 usually don't have enough money at the end of the day to spend on things like college sticker prices, because they have multiple kids. They might be upside down on a mortgage. They might be struggling just to make it day by day. And so a lot of those people will purposefully avoid sending their kids to quote unquote expensive colleges because they don't think they'll get any financial aid. But at the end of the day, when they find out from things like the CSS profile that allows the college to take a much deeper look at your finances, not just how much you make, but how that money is spent. So if you have like bad loans, or if you're upside down in your mortgage, that's why the colleges need to take that information to decide if they're going to adjust the sticker price. And the majority of my families have always, even making $300,000 or $400,000 a year, have been able to get something in return. Typically for those kids, it's a merit-based scholarship.
Okay, I think there's a question now, right?
Okay.
Yeah, a couple just popped up.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So one of the audience members asked if there are forms of aid for students whose parents make 165. Yes, there's actually forms of aid for parents who make 500,000. And typically you can go on to the individual college websites, and then you could look under first year freshman scholarships. And many parents are completely blown away that a lot of colleges will give you money simply for a certain GPA or for a certain test score. And we could talk more about that at another time. Middle class scholarship. So typically for the University of California, based on the exact numbers of what your income is, they can adjust tuition. And I think Vinny had mentioned from 10 to 40%. Correct, Vinny?
Right.
Yeah. And so I've had kids that's been a godsend for, because otherwise they would not have been able to afford to go to a UC at all.
Yeah, the reason why the state of California did the middle class scholarship is that they realized that over time, so that UC Blue and Gold program was capped if your income was 80,000. Then they realized that with inflation, etc., 80,000 is not a lot of people were going outside that. So that's why they introduced that program.
The next question was about the CSS profile. So the CSS profile, if you Google it, if you just type in CSS profile participating institutions, it'll tell you all the schools that participate as well as their deadlines, but it's for private colleges. It's not for the UC, and it's not for the Cal State or public schools in general. There's a list of private colleges that use it. It's been adding in, there's colleges that get added to it every year, but the quickest way is to just simply Google it, and you can have the list right in front of you with their deadline dates as well. Someone throw us some more questions. There's also things that kids can start considering doing, and this is another thing that I have kids that do. Sometimes, when I was growing up, my dad's like, you need to get a job and experience what a job is like. And I spent so many hours working that my grades suffered. And the irony is that if you make above a certain amount as a student, then that could actually affect the possibility of receiving financial aid. So it's not better to have a student work 40 hours to try and put money away for college, especially if they end up making a lot of money, because then all that work they put into earning the money gives them potentially less money that they could have got, along with getting the higher grades to get into the colleges they want. So
Rick, let's do this while we're waiting for more questions. And I hope that we did not scare our audience today into not asking more questions, or maybe we just solved the problem. Unlikely though. So let me very quickly talk about, while we'll be around till 12 noon Pacific time. So while you're thinking of questions, let me quickly talk about how you can get help from UC Easy if you are feeling overwhelmed with the financial aid process or with college admissions in general. So I'll just spend maybe 5 minutes and then we'll come back and take more questions.
There's one question about
Sure.
middle-class scholarship. And the question is the middle-class scholarship within the FAFSA? And the answer is no. FAFSA is for federal aid, and then the middle-class scholarship specifically for UC, that's a UC thing. So FAFSA is just a generic way for all the colleges that you add to that FAFSA application to review your finances and then indicate what your expected family contribution and cost of attendance will be, by campus. So the way it works is the college that you've added to FAFSA will receive your information, and then once, usually in early spring, you'll get a letter back saying if you were to attend this college, this is how much money it would cost you, and then you can begin that negotiation process.
Thanks very much, Rick. As I said, Rick, please keep typing your questions. Rick will come back in about 4 or 5 minutes. Let me very quickly share with you how you can get help from UC Easy. Several of you are current UC Easy customers. I'm sorry, this is going to be a repetition for you. But for the others, hopefully this is helpful information. So remember, I talked about that UC Easy's mission is to help students from first and second generation immigrant families with admissions to US colleges. Our secondary mission is to reduce the stress that families and students face with respect to college admissions. Financial aid is a big source of that stress or the cost. And that's one of the reasons why we did this webinar today. So the US college admissions process is highly competitive, and it just keeps getting worse and worse. The question for first and second generation immigrant families is, where is your child getting help from? And if your child is going to a public high school, how does your child compete against students that go to an expensive private high school where there's so many more resources to help the child with college admissions preparation? In our California public system, the average student to counselor ratio is 975. Think about it for a second. 975, that basically means that over 4 years in a public high school, the average college admissions help available to a student is 38 minutes. 75% of high school students in the US receive no college admissions help at all. Why? Because our public high schools cannot afford someone like Rick. These are nationally published numbers, New York Times and all of those. I'm not making any of this up. So how can UC Easy help? Because the school counselor ratio is so adverse and the quality a lot of time is questionable. And school counselors, they stop working at 3. Whereas your student will not have time for college admissions until after school or on the weekends. So how do you address that gap? UC Easy, that's us, we have a team of 25 college admission and financial aid experts like Mr. Rick Napora. These people will provide your child one-on-one guidance for every aspect of the college admissions process, starting from 8th grade, all the way till 12th, even community college transfers. We strongly recommend that you start our program in 8th grade, but it doesn't matter if you're in 10th, 11th, 12th grade, our professionals can help. And we can help in every different area, essays, financial aid. You can sign up for our full program, or you can come to us and say, we need help only for certain things. We are currently supporting 500 students, and you can visit our website to learn more. Typically, how our programs work is that we have a standard curriculum for different grades. This is available on our website. So for example, in 8th and 9th grade, we'll talk about extracurricular strategy, how best to use summer, what courses to take in the following year, which is a hugely stressful thing for students from first generation families. We talk about testing strategy, which test to take, SAT or ACT, and when, how to prepare for it. And then in 11th grade and 12th grade, we start helping with college essays, college list, financial aid, etc. The whole list is available on our website in the free resources section. The way you work with us is step 1, contact us. we will schedule a 30-minute free session with you where we would like to learn about your specific situation, your child's credentials, aspirations, challenges, and based upon that, we will suggest what is the best program to work, best program for your family, and which is the best UC Easy counselor from our team of 25 for your child. Among other things, what we do is that we will interview your child for 5 or 10 minutes over video. The goal is to find a counselor from UC Easy team that matches the child's personality and learning style. Once you do the 30 minutes, then what you can do is that you can maybe start with 1 hour with one of our counselors. You pay for that, and then you can either sign up for our just an annual program or a multi-year program, or just block of hours for specific needs like essays or financial aid or some such thing. We also have monthly payment plans available for families that cannot afford annual plans or bigger amounts of money like that. This is an example of monthly payment plans. Like, for example, if you are a 9th grader, it's $115 a month for the entire academic year, so 8 more payments in the 9th grade. Okay, so just the last slide here about summary about UC Easy, that our company is focused on helping students from first and second generation immigrant families. We focus on the whole child and not just the grades and SAT scores as it comes to college application process. We focus on the whole child. So as a part of our counseling programs, we actually help the child transition from 8th to 9th grade to help settle into high school in 9th grade. In 10th grade, we are monitoring your child's stress levels. So again, the idea is to make high school itself a successful journey, because from that journey comes out a competitive child that will compete well for colleges. We also have educational programs for first and second generation parents that do not or that did not go to US high schools. This is a free program offered to UC Easy clients. All right, so with that, there are free resources that you can find on our site. Like, for example, today's recording will be available free. Let's take more questions. I'm going to fire up a feedback poll. And also, if you enjoyed the seminar today, if I can just request you to like our Facebook page. Rick, let's take more questions, sir. Oh, I think you're on mute.
Sure, anyone, ask us anything. It could be anything that you could pull up. Very quiet audience today.
So, Rick, if a family is seniors, we talked about that. If a family is a junior, should they be doing anything with respect to financial aid? I guess simple stuff from my own personal example, the need to start saving ahead. There is no substitute for smart saving, 529 plans and such. What else can they do just at a high level, and what are the biggest mistakes to avoid? So maybe just one of each, right? What is the one thing they can do in junior year, and what is the one big mistake to avoid?
So the mistake is not applying for scholarships as soon as possible. So kids can start applying for scholarships as soon as they set foot on a high school campus. So most schools have a student information system. Some schools use Naviance. Most of the schools will post scholarships that come to the desk of the Career Center coordinator as early as 9th grade, and kids can just start, potentially, and you usually have somewhat more time as a freshman than you would as a junior. And so I've had kids that have been applying for scholarships since their freshman year, and by the time they reach their senior year, they have already had several hundred thousands of dollars of scholarships. So that's really important. And it's also important to make sure that anything that you do outside of school, that you keep a running journal or log, because some schools will award scholarships based on activities. So there's a website that if we decide to work with a client and we could share among others, there's one that's called Raise Me. There's a couple of them out there where kids are awarded micro scholarships just for things that they've done. So the problem is most kids, by the time we see them as juniors or seniors, have a litany of things they've done that they've long since forgotten about. So make sure that you keep a running log or journal of things that you've done. Parents should not discount colleges, and kids should not let their grades be impacted by thinking they could never go to college. I had a first-gen kid come the other day that didn't even realize that she could have applied to not only 4 UCs for free, but also 4 Cal States for free, and also up to 8 private schools for free. So if a student is on free and reduced lunch, make sure you talk with your school counselor, because some kids are too proud to let us know that they need money. So I have a lot of kids that kind of suffer in silence. The parents are doing all that they can to make ends meet. And
Rick, I think you went on mute again somehow.
Oh no, I'm still there, right?
Okay, you're back.
All right, yeah. So work with your school counselor to let them know that your situation is what it is. It's confidential, but if you do need money, then there's lots of ways for us to get you the assistance you need. And as Vinny mentioned, you should never let your finances, whether you make $1 million a year or if you're barely scraping by, affect like your potential choices for colleges afterwards.
Okay, do we have any other questions?
Let's look. Oh, so one of the just recent one is, if a student's abandoned by parents and has no family support, how does he file for FAFSA and CSS? So what'll happen is, this is kind of a lengthier question, but legally, if I'm a counselor at a school and a parent does abandon a student, that becomes a CPS issue. So that's another topic whatsoever. But let's say that the best way, if a student is abandoned, is to actually file for emancipation. If the parents do in fact want nothing to do with the student, and the student can demonstrate to a judge that he or she is able to financially provide for himself or herself, typically, if they can gain emancipation, then they're considered an independent student, and they're able to file for FAFSA and CSS as an independent without having to report parent income and assets.
Awesome, Rick. That was great. Thank you so much for your time, Rick, today. And please continue to stay safe with all these Southern California wildfires. So just wanted to thank our audience for attending the program today and for filling our feedback poll. Rick and I do hope that the information provided was helpful. And at the end of the day, I hope that we are able to reduce your stress somewhat with this process. Please continue looking for our events. We are going to be taking a little bit of a break this December with the holiday season. So a early holiday wish to you and your loved ones from all of us at UC Easy. But back in January, we'll be back with several events. There is one for high school juniors. There is one for how do you think beyond grades and test scores for getting into top tier colleges. For those of you in Silicon Valley, there are several seminars, etc. available. Thank you again so much. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and looking forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks for now. Bye.